You ever have one of those days when someone just shows up, tells you your world's about to change, and you realize there's not a damn thing you can do about it? That's exactly how it felt when Karen Miller stepped onto my lawn one morning, all self-important in her beige pantsuit, clipboard in hand, and said, "This isn't a request, Mr. Davies. This is a notification of compulsory eminent domain for community improvement." I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because, for a second, I couldn't believe it was happening. She was standing on my property, telling me she was going to turn my private woods into a damn tennis court. And just like that, the peaceful life I'd fought for over 20 years was being ripped out from under me. It wasn't just about land. No, it was about Karen's need to control, to play God in a neighborhood she barely knew. She was the new president of the HOA, freshly elected, and it was clear she was hungry for power. Behind her, the 5 acres of woodland I'd bought when I retired from the Army Corps of Engineers stood silent. My quiet sanctuary, the place where my kids played, where Sarah and I found our peace after years of moving around the country. But now Karen was determined to bulldoze all of that, figuratively and literally. She handed me a sheet of paper that looked more like a crude drawing than a legal document, marking my land as the site for the Oakwood Bluffs Recreational Complex. Just like that, it was no longer my woods. It was their vision for the community. I stood there, holding her paper, staring at her. My face was still, my expression flat, years of military training kicking in. "You can't let them see you flinch. You can't be serious," I said, my voice calm, like I wasn't just about to explode. "This land isn't part of your HOA. It's not even close." Karen dismissed me with a sniff, all high and mighty. "A procedural technicality," she said. "We've had our legal counsel look into it. The developer's original intent was for all adjacent land to be incorporated into the community. You should be thanking us. This will increase your property value." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wasn't just trying to take my land. She was framing it as a favor, as if she were doing me some kind of great service. And that was when the anger started to rise up, slow and cold. She had no idea what she was getting into. You don't mess with a man's home, his land, his peace. Not without a fight. Now let me back up a bit. This all started out with the promise of peace. Sarah and I, after decades of moving around, wanted one thing: a place to call our own. Oakwood Bluffs seemed like the perfect spot. It was a mix of old, settled homes, and new enough to still have some room to breathe. We found a house that fit our needs, but the real treasure was the 5 acres of undeveloped woods behind it. It wasn't part of the HOA. It had its own deed, its own partial number. This was going to be our retreat. I checked everything. Every deed, every covenant, every restriction. My land wasn't under the HOA's control. For 10 years, everything was perfect. The kids built forts in the woods. Sarah and I took evening walks on the trail. It was ours. But then George, the old HOA president, moved away. In came Karen Miller, the board's treasurer, and suddenly, everything changed. She ran for president unopposed, and from day one, she had big plans for community improvement. At first, it was little things. A new shade of white for window trim, garbage cans that had to match a specific color. Little annoyances. But the real kicker came when Karen started pushing her community vision initiative, plans for a new clubhouse and tennis courts. Problem was, there was no land left for development, except for my 5 acres. I wasn't going to just roll over. I drafted a letter to the HOA, professional and polite, but firm. I laid out the facts, citing the deeds, the legal language, everything. My woods were mine, and Karen had no claim to them. I sent it certified mail. I wanted a record, wanted them to know I wasn't going to back down. A week later, I got their reply. Not a formal letter from their lawyer. No, it was a single page from Karen herself. "Thank you for your letter. However, you seem to be operating under a misunderstanding," she wrote. "We expect your full cooperation. This project is for the good of the community." It was clear, Karen wasn't just mistaken. She was acting like she could just rewrite the rules. And that's when I realized this wasn't a simple dispute, it was war. The fines started coming. Little things. A $50 citation for lawn height, a $75 fine for garbage cans being left out too long. I documented every single one. Photos, invoices, everything. I wasn't going to let them wear me down. Every fine, every violation went into my HOA harassment binder. Then came the quarterly HOA meeting. That's when Karen made her biggest mistake. She didn't mention me by name. but it was clear who she was talking about when she referred to a minor procedural hurdle in the way of their community vision. She painted herself as the hero, the one trying to move the neighborhood forward, and me as the villain. But something changed. The room was quieter than usual. Some of Karen's supporters nodded along, but others shifted in their seats. I could see it, they were uncomfortable. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was a sense of justice starting to stir. After the meeting, Sarah and I walked out, the air thick with tension. "What are we going to do?" she asked. I knew right then, it was time to go on the offensive. No more defending. We were going to investigate. I started digging, researching every single document related to the HOA. I didn't stop until I had found what I was looking for, the original plat map of Oakwood Bluffs. I drove down to the county records office, found the map, and there it was, proof that the HOA had never legally owned the streets in Oakwood Bluffs. They had been operating under a massive, fundamental oversight. All of Karen's power? It was based on a lie. I went to Dave Sterling, a lawyer I'd served with in Iraq. He saw it immediately. Karen had been making all these claims of authority, but the truth was, she didn't have any. The HOA didn't own the roads, and therefore, Karen had no legal right to enforce traffic rules, issue parking tickets, or do anything she'd been doing for the last few years. It was time to set the trap. We sent Karen a letter, not from me, but from Dave's office, asking for clarification on the HOA's ownership of the roads. And Karen, being Karen, couldn't resist. She blustered, claimed ownership of everything, and provided us with a decade's worth of evidence that the HOA had been spending money on property they didn't own. It was exactly what we needed. The annual HOA meeting came, and it was time. We had everything in place, proof, strategy, and a plan. When Karen stood at the podium, ready to push her tennis courts once again, I asked her one simple question. "Could you please provide us with the deed or title that grants the HOA ownership of Primrose Lane and the other streets?" The room went silent. Karen, flustered, tried to brush it off. But we had her. And when the county plat map appeared on the screen behind her, showing that the roads weren't owned by the HOA, the truth hit like a freight train. The rest of the meeting was chaos. People started shouting. Karen's reign of terror ended right there. The board was dissolved, and Karen was ousted. Her power trip didn't just cost her position, it was about to cost her a fortune. And in the weeks that followed, things changed. Mrs. Gable's garden gnomes were back. The Millers' basketball hoop went back up. The neighborhood began to breathe again, free of Karen's control. And my 5 acres? They were safe. Forever. As for Karen, I saw her in the grocery store a few weeks later. She looked small, powerless. It was almost sad, but not quite, because in the end, the real lesson here was simple. Power isn't about control. It's about trust, respect, and the willingness to stand your ground. So what do you think? How far do you think someone should be allowed to go for power before they're called out? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've ever had to stand up for what's right, I'd love to hear your story.